Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is The Local Live.
Hello everyone, I'm Alina Suriel and you're watching The Local Live. Tonight we're bringing you the inside scoop on what's happening in Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and Rhinebeck. Here with me tonight is Anthony Carlo hosting for the very first time.
Thanks, Alina, and welcome everyone to the 28th episode of The Local Live. It's great to be here. Let's see what we have in store for you tonight.
In our roundtable tonight, Maura Carlin speaks with local wine experts. Francois Steichen, DWS, that is, he is a holder of a diploma in wine and spirits. Francois Steichen is the manager of Vinifera in Mamaroneck, and Greg O'Brien owns Wine Tasters of Larchmont. They'll discuss pairing options, smart purchases for summer parties, and trends in the world of wine.
But before we get to our wine discussion, here's a preview of tonight's upcoming stories.
Want to know what was addressed at the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees meeting? Stay tuned.
And this week, Local Live reporter Kyle Byrne proceeded to the streets of Larchmont to get locals' perspective on the developing Iraq crisis.
What is the power of math? Find out tonight.
Jesse and Stella are two adorable puppies looking for a loving family to take care of them. Please help them find a home. There is a new law proposal in the Village of Mamaroneck, and it has come to the attention of our community members. The proposal states that anyone who wishes to demolish a building must first obtain a permit before beginning the job. Some residents associate this proposal with the announced demolition of the Mamaroneck movie theater by their owners, Bow Tie Cinema. Mayor Rosenblum stated that this law has nothing to do with the movie theater itself. Rather, it has to do with requiring building owners to get village approval of a replacement building before knocking down an existing building. Although the proposal is not yet finalized, community members are expressing their opinions. Let's take a look.
I really truly feel that time has to be given and everybody needs to know what's going on so they can say whether or not they think that having 40 condos put up across the street from their store or their restaurant or their condo, that they want that. I mean, you can't get down Mamaroneck anymore. Basically, I moved, down the street because Mamaroneck became so congested. It was like being in the city again.
We are looking at a potential development of a building in the central business district, which does not have parking at the moment, increasing the intensity of the parking, maybe not as much as a movie theater, but they're still going to have to provide their own parking now. I think that's an issue that we need to look at.
I think everyone is sad that the Playhouse and its history might be lost. But I do think Seeker offers us an opportunity to deal with that issue in a more site-specific way.
Later on in the same public hearing, the possibility of allowing leaf blower use year-round was addressed. The law states that in the Village of Mamaroneck, leaf blowers are not allowed to be used between May 15th and September 30th. The re-examination of this law has created a stir in the community. Locals from the village argued that if the leaf blower ban was to be lifted, it could cause significant environmental and health problems for the community. Let's take a look at residents' reaction.
Leaf blowers create large volumes of asthma in children, can aggravate respiratory disease in the elderly in our community. Noise is a second hazard associated with leaf blowers. Those who operate the machines and those who are very near it, particularly children who are in the neighborhood when a lot of leaf blowers are being used, can have their hearing damaged.
The dust produced by leaf blowers is particularly bad for children. It's bad for the elderly, it's bad for our pets, it's bad for anyone who participates in outdoor activities. There is more dust thrown up during the summer when the ground is dry, during the summer when people are out and about, enjoying outdoor activities.
According to the EPA and National Health, 7 are cancer-causing, 6 cause birth defects, 6 affect reproduction, 8 are neurotoxic, and 9 damage kidneys and liver. This is what leaf blowers are blowing up in the air. And it's not restricted to a few hours. Depending upon the particle size in microns, it could be restricted to days. And it's not restricted to 6 feet. It could go out as far as around the community.
Remember, you can watch the whole meeting online. Just go to www.lmctv.org and look for the videos on demand.
Now let's take a look at Mike Witch's summary of the local news in his segment, In the Media.
The Hamlet Hub reports that Chatsworth School will be a beehive of repairs inside and outside starting soon. Electrical upgrades, new bathrooms, paint and carpeting in the library, and extensive work on the school stage. The school and playground will be closed to students and parents while the work goes on. The Hamlet Hub has named local reporter Gloria Spedafino Gole to its staff. She's a lifelong resident and holds leadership positions in the Rye-Neck PTSA. She's also a member of the Rye-Neck Advocacy Committee and sits on the advisory committee for the 2 elementary schools. This week's Patch has a story about the recent meeting of the local summit, the one about all the pipes that carry gas, water, sanitation, and sewage below our streets. The consensus of all the speakers is that there are significant problems that will be expensive to repair. Those in attendance learned who owns what and the general condition of the pipes. Town Administrator Steve Altieri talked about the water supply system, with some pipes more than 100 years old and new mandates from the Environmental Protection Agency. Mayor Ann McAndrews characterized the village of Larchmont as, quote, a lovely old house on the Sound that needs constant maintenance and, on occasion, a massive infusion of cash. The mayor and the Mamaroneck village manager, Richard Slingerland, described the sanitation and sewer lines as mostly old pipes, many clogged with rust or sediment. The speakers agreed that the best solution is a partnership among the federal, state, and local governments to share the burden of maintaining and improving the various infrastructures. The meeting was hosted by the Larchmont Mamaroneck Local Summit, an informal community council that seeks to make life better for all in the tri-municipal area. It was recorded by LMC-TV and is playing on our community channels. The next local summit meeting will take place on Tuesday, September 16th. The Hamlet Hub reports that MHS seniors Kellen Jansen and Meg Dowd were awarded scholarships last week. It was the 32nd annual Rockefeller Awards for Excellence in Fine Arts and Performing Arts. Since 1982, 2 graduates are recognized for outstanding achievement, one in fine arts and one in performing arts. Kellen will attend the Alfred University School of Art and Design in the fall, and Meg will attend the University of Chicago. In this week's Loop, news that Chatsworth Avenue may cut the number of 4th grade classes, resulting in 4 to 5 more students in each room, or so says an email from some parents. In other news, Karen Russo was named as assistant principal at Central School and Emily Macias Kaplan as assistant principal at Chatsworth Avenue School. Where can you see the fireworks this July 4th? Well, the Patch has published a complete list of local shows. In Mamaroneck, fireworks will burst over Harbor Island Park on Friday, July 4th, beginning at 9 p.m., and they'll appear over Playland about the same time. And finally, the Town of Mamaroneck Recreation Department is hosting a summer concert series this season at Memorial Park. The concerts will be on Mondays in July at 7 p.m. There will be all types of music from rhythm and blues to family rock and roll. The Hamlet Hub printed a full schedule. The first concert takes place July 7th. It's rhythm and blues music with Billy and the Showmen. And those are some of the items that I found interesting this week in the media. I'm Michael Witch.
Hello Mamaroneck, I'm Carly Rose and you are watching The Local Live.
Thank you for joining the Local Live Roundtable. I'm Maura Carlin. With me is our social media co-host, Rebecca Berman. And this evening, the Local Live talks wine with local experts.
We invite you to ask questions by phone, email, or tweet. Call in to the show at 914-381-0150. Email thelocallive@lmc-tv.org or tweet at thelocallive. That information also will be on the screen during the conversation with Maura and her guests tonight.
Red, white, or blush? How do you like your wine? Cold or room temperature? And what should you bring to that summer barbecue, clam bake, or picnic? Joining us are two local wine experts, Francois Steichen, the manager of Mamaroneck's Vinifera, and Greg O'Brien, the owner of Larchmont's Wine Tasters. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Us. It seems there's something about wine. Either you're into it and knowledgeable, or you're completely intimidated and scared to pick one. So I'm going to ask you, and if you'll forgive the pun, to uncork the mystery and give us some wine ABCs.
Well, I think for wine, it's best to taste and try a few different wines to see what direction you want to go in. And from there, you can start to pick and choose different varietals. Like if you prefer Sauvignon Blancs, you can go towards Pinot Grigios or maybe Italian whites. So there's different directions to go in. So if you've never tried wine before, try a red, try a white, see which one you like better. Ask your local wine merchant to help you. They're usually very knowledgeable. And
what do you think, Francois?
I fully agree. I can't emphasize enough.
Huh?
Not on this one. I do think, there's something like 800 grapes in Italy alone, and I think in France there's and Spain there's just as many, and it can be a real very difficult, I think, to get through it all. I think a great thing is to speak with somebody that you feel that you can trust. Go around to as many stores as you can before you decide, and ask a lot of questions. I also would say that picking some wines in sort of the $12 to $25 range is a good idea, because I think there's a lot of great stuff out there that's not that expensive.
So, but are you suggesting we pick a grape or pick a color and then pursue it? Or, because the truth is, at least for me, I need a bottle of wine around $20. I'm going to someone's house. What do you have? I mean, I assume that's mostly what you get.
Well, I think if you have a venue you're going to and there's food pairings, it's always good to bring something that will complement the food. If you're just having it as an aperitif during the summer when it's hot out, maybe a rosé or a chilled white, or even a sparkling like a Prosecco. They're refreshing. They tend to be a little bit lower in alcohol, not as heavy. You can there's many different ways to go in that direction. There's so many different flavors as well, just on the white side. So there's a lot of options.
Pick a grape. There's two ways to go. You can pick a grape, for example, just off the top of my head, a Sauvignon Blanc, which is a great summer wine. Sauvignon Blancs are made, and it's very crisp. It's crisp. Very good acidity, very refreshing. They're made in New Zealand. They're made in France. They're made in California. They're made in so many different areas in South Africa, but they taste different, and they have slightly different styles. And a great way to get to know wine in general is to pick one grape and do that, or pick a region and do all the grapes in a region.
So you mentioned the, I think, $12 to $25 price range, which tends to be what most of us look for. Is that really reasonable? You don't have to go to the $100 bottles to get a good glass of wine?
I don't think so. I think you ask any guy in the trade who's willing to speak honestly. We do it ourselves. We're not. We taste $300 wines occasionally, sure, but we're looking. Our favorite wines are the ones that we're getting a lot of value out of, meaning that it gives us just this impression when we taste it. We say to ourselves, "Geez, I wouldn't have expected to pay that little for that wine." Those are our favorites, and I think they should be the public's favorites too.
What about the controversy about the cork versus the twist off? I mean, I have a reaction like, oh my God, you're twisting it? And yet I've had some very good wines that open like soda bottles.
Yep.
I think that the old world countries like Italy and France are slower to adapt to that, but the new world countries like South America, New Zealand, Australia, they're really, as far as I'm concerned, very little difference unless you're aging them for decades or something like that, where the cork interacts with the wine, the humidity, shrinks the cork, expands the cork, adds
where the science gets involved.
Yeah, so for everyday drinking purposes, or even wines that are 2 or 3 years old, a screw cap will do just fine. I mean, the science is there, it's sealed. The enemy of wine is really exposure to air. It gets oxidized. So as long as it doesn't get oxidized, you should be fine.
I have a question for you. Now, I know, like, if you go to a supermarket in Paris, you can buy an excellent bottle of wine for $5. Maybe it's euros, you know, but exchange rate wise. What is your feeling on that?
You know, there's lots of good wines that are, you know, $9 to $15. We certainly have a selection of them. Customers, you know, it depends on how much they want to serve. If they're having a big party, they might want to, you know, keep the price down a little bit. Whatever the case may be, we have wines, you know, fitting all price ranges. But as Francois said, you know, under $25, you can get a beautiful bottle of wine. I mean, one that, you know, I've had $100 bottles of wine, but this $20 bottle of wine will be just fine, you know.
Okay, so
I don't mean to crucify my colleagues on the wholesale side of the trade, but we have a three-tier system in the United States. And there's a couple of middlemen between, you know, the wine producer and the retailer. So unfortunately in this country, yeah, you know, there probably is a little bit of padding in there. But that's the legal structure that we have to observe, and it's unfortunate in a lot of ways. It is changing, but changing slowly.
Are the wines better in Europe than in this country?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I don't think so. You ask all my colleagues and they'll tell you that I'm you know, big European, you know, with my name and the whole bit. I love Australian wines. I love California wines. I think the key, though, is balance. And by that I mean you can't have too much fruit in a wine. You can't have too much alcohol. You can't have too much of any of the any of the four major elements, and that includes acidity and things like that. If you have a good balanced wine, it really doesn't matter where it comes from. A good winemaker will always find a way to produce a good wine that's balanced.
So we don't have to be looking into what the soil content is, or.
Oh.
Well, actually,
because I assume it's different in Spain and Italy than it is in California or Washington State.
And that, you know, that makes a big difference. I think the difference between an old world country like Italy and the United States is they have so many more different varieties of grapes over there, hybrids, you know, cultivated over, you know, millennia. So there's just a lot more variety over there, but that doesn't make it any worse or any better.
It's just different.
It's just different. So what we like to do for our customers is find them something unusual. Like they'll be like, you know, I really like this blend from California, and it might have some odd grapes in it. And so we'll pick something out from Italy for them. And, you know, they tend to be a little more earthy. They use really old oak barrels, which gives it a tremendous characteristic. So those things are all there.
What do you think of New York wines?
I actually had that listed as one of my trims. You had asked me to prepare with a couple trims, and I love them. I'm astounded by the inventiveness that there exists in New York State. The Finger Lakes especially, I think has become in the past 5 years, we can well and truly call it a world-class growing region, especially in the Rieslings and some of the Cabernet Francs and things like that even. A less heralded area, but I think really nice also is the Hudson, and I've been surprised, especially one of the winemakers on the Hudson I've found is doing things with the so-called American varieties that I have never seen before. He's creating these wines that still have that very American taste, and yet they taste good. Frequently in the past, a lot of wine people will tell you that what's called foxiness is not a desirable quality. He's actually made some really nice wines. So New York is really on the forefront.
So we'll have to get his name after the show.
Yeah,
yes.
I agree with that. But for New York State, we find some really good like red blends or Cabernet Franc. There's one that we found last year that we really loved, and we were ordering it and selling it, and then the New York Times got a hold of it, and then it was sold out just like that. So scarcity on the really good quality wines is still there, even on the Rieslings. As soon as somebody starts to talk about it or put it into literature, they disappear.
As soon as it hits wine magazine,
it's
gone?
Yeah, they're just scarce. The quantity that's available, especially in a large market like the metro area here, it's hard to keep the quantity. Keep the supply.
One of our viewers had a good question, Sydney Wright. She says, why do I get sleepy when I drink wine? Also, wine gives me the worst hangovers.
Yeah.
I mean, these are like common everyday experiences. Do you guys have any advice for her, or any wines that maybe she should lean towards?
Or away from.
Or away from, exactly.
Yeah, I do. Couple of things. I mean, you definitely, if you can get an organic wine, I always tell people if they're having trouble with that kind of thing, go with an organic wine. Another thing I suggest to them is not to drink, 2 bottles when 1 would suffice, because frequently those headaches.
Temperance.
But all joking aside, it can also be, unfortunately, some things that we find in our, as much in our food as things like pesticides and things that we get worried about in our food, we really should be worried about also in the wine. And unfortunately, there are areas where that is a little more prevalent, things like the Central Valley of California, and, more in the New World areas, unfortunately, you tend to have a little more of those problems.
That's interesting.
I also think a lot of it is people who have allergies or whatever the case may be. Just drink a nice big glass of water before you start drinking the wine, and drink a nice big glass of water after you finish drinking the wine, and see how you feel the next day after you're doing something like that, because that'll help control the alcohol in the body. Also remember, wine has a lot of different things going on inside of it. It has yeasts and it's fermented, so it interacts with whatever you're eating. If you're taking medication, everybody says I'm sulfite sensitive. Are you really sulfite sensitive? Who's to tell? I don't even think the doctors know. So I think those basic types of things will help. I think, then see what happens.
Okay, so the 4th of July is coming up. Going to a barbecue. What do I bring?
I have a couple things that I really like. For burgers and that kind of thing, I really like, a lot of people tell you, get a Zinfandel, big, powerful wine. It'll go well for
Red
any
or
kind of... red, red Zinfandel, yeah, sorry. I tend to go the other way. I kind of like the lighter wines that are a little more fruity, because I think they pair perfectly with all those kind of carbonized things like hamburgers that are, so like a Barbera from Italy, from northern Italy, nice and fruity, a Côte d'Aron, a Garnacha from Spain, Pinot Noir from Oregon, let's not forget the United States. They're all lighter wines that just have tremendous flavor, and they overwhelm any kind of, that char that you get on some barbecue.
And if I'm hosting the barbecue, what do I get in volume?
I would say, during the summer, especially if the weather's going to be nice, Prosecco is overtaking champagne as the #1 bubbly in the world last year. It's a great party starter. It's lower in alcohol. You can consume it a little bit longer without getting drowsy.
Is it also because of the price?
Yeah, and it's very reasonably priced. They tend not to be as dry and yeasty as champagnes or even some of the California sparklings, and there's a reason for that. They're light, they're refreshing, they're not as heavy, and you don't have to have them with food. There's some champagnes where you really should have them with food. That's how sophisticated they are. So Proseccos are good. Like Francois said, red blends are great. I mean, a Zinfandel blend, maybe with a little Syrah in it or something like that to complement a barbecue, or a heavy tomato sauce or something like that. It's always easygoing. You can even do like a chilled Sancerre, a red Sancerre from France. My manager, James, he loves those summer reds, he calls them. You chill them. You put them in the fridge for 10 minutes.
You chill them.
Right,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
And, and they're not as popular, but, when customers come in and say, give me something, and you give it to them, they come back and they're like, wow, that was really good. Yeah, so.
Okay, so then, you go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry. A really nice fruity red that people just absolutely love, it's just a fun wine, is Lambrusco. Not the Lambrusco that you had when you were like 22 and first starting to drink, and it was super sugary and awful. But things from like Lini produces a wonderful Lambrusco in white, red, and rosé, and it becomes the hit of the party.
Okay. Now, what if it's a clam bake or lobster? What do we serve and what do we bring?
I'm going to go with white. Especially with lobster, I would actually go towards a Chardonnay, but a real clean, and by that I mean not too oaked Chardonnay. And then one of my favorite wines lately, it's from Lazio, which is the area around Rome, and it's called Casale del Giglio Satrico. It's a white wine. It goes very, very well with that kind of, especially a clam bake.
What is your opinion? We have one of our viewers has sent in a question. Should you cook with the same wine that you serve? Do you guys have an opinion on that?
Always. It doesn't have to be an expensive bottle, but take a sip before you start cooking with it, because inevitably it's going to be something you're eating.
But should you then use that same wine to drink after? I realize that you want a decent quality to cook with, but you want to continue the flavor?
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on what you're cooking, if you're going to make, a heavy red sauce and you're going to add red wine, have a glass while you're cooking and then have it with your dinner. It'll go perfectly.
Right.
For white sauces, Sauvignon Blancs, Pinot Grigios, or Italian whites, like a Falangino or Vermentino, any of those are just fantastic. And they're not expensive.
Are there summer storage issues we should consider? Being warmer, more humid?
No, never. The heat and sunlight is a wine's worst enemy. So any kind of bubbly wine, you want to keep it in a cool, dark place away from any kind of refrigerators or boilers or any kind of equipment that's running with the compressor. Cool, dark, humid.
Well, that's
good.
unopened. When it's open, do you put it in the refrigerator?
You should. During
Even
the summer.
reds?
Yeah.
They last longer.
I'm really kind of strict about that question. I really think that most reds are pretty much done after about a day and a half, 2 at the most. Whites, even less than that, 6 hours to 12 hours.
So you advocate finishing the bottle?
Yeah, because here's the thing, it's not,
He's like,
well, I'm going to get to
unfazed with that.
It really has nothing to do with the cold or the it does when you're refrigerating unopened bottles, when you're storing unopened bottles, but opened ones, it really doesn't have anything to do with hot or cold. It's an issue of the oxygen that actually gets in there. Having said that, there's a new tool out called Coravin, and I don't want to advertise for them, but they're really the only tool so far that has managed to allow you to pour out a certain quantity of wine and keep the rest of the bottle completely intact, and so no oxygen gets in there. It's probably a little too complicated to explain here, but
it's like a one-way valve.
It's sort of a one-way valve where that
like
injects an inert gas in there and replaces the vacuum. We found that works very well, but otherwise, all these pumps and all the rest of it, they work to an extent, but they really don't keep the wine fresh.
And I have to ask, do you carry wine and alcohol products by any of the Real Housewives?
We carry the Skinnygirl Margarita, Cosmo, but we don't carry any of the wines.
You don't carry the wines from some of the New York or New Jersey
no,
Real Housewives?
I don't. I would like to carry the Skinny Girl, because I think I do have quite a number of requests for that.
You do?
Yeah.
There's things that have allowed me to do that, but maybe in the future.
Are there any particular wines you'd like to give a shout out to or recommend?
This summer we're really having a lot of fun with Italian whites. A lot of them customers aren't too familiar with, like Falanginas, there's Grecos, there's, Pinot Nero whites. It's actually a Pinot Noir white wine, which is really unusual, but they're delicious. They're unusual, and when customers come in and you've given them something before that they're like, oh, let's try something new. Inevitably, they fall in love with them. They're just so obscure. People don't know a lot about them. Yeah.
Aglianico.
Aglianico?
Aglianico is a grape from southern Italy. It mimics a lot of the flavors of Barolo, and guess what? It's about a third to a quarter the price.
Right.
So when you hear about how great Barolo is, that's certainly very true, but you're going to have to pay a pretty penny for it. So my little secret tip is to go with the Aglianico. The other grape I love is Cabernet Franc, especially from the Loire Valley. Cabernet Francs from New York State as well are very nice. It's a grape not many people know about, but it's absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful, and we're unfortunately already out of time.
Yeah, it goes fast.
Thank you. It does. Thank you to Francois Steichen of Vinifera in Mamaroneck and Greg O'Brien of Wine Tasters in Larchmont.
Remember that if you have any ideas for a future roundtable discussion, you can write us at thelocallive@lmctv.org or tweet us at thelocallive. We love hearing from you.
Thanks for joining our roundtable.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more community stories.
Hi, I'm Judge Christy Derrico. Watch The Local Live Thursdays at 7:30 on LMC TV. That's in order.
Our very own Alina Suriel recently discovered the power of math. She interviewed local math coach Mariana Ivanov on the Mamaroneck School District's engaging curriculum. Roll the tape.
The Common Core educational standards have been a source of controversy since their implementation in Mamaroneck schools last year. With many parents wondering how to best prepare their students for the test, the Mamaroneck School District itself has taken a proactive approach.
70% of the instructional time has to be spent on whatever topics each grade level is required to teach for most of their time, which is great because it really allows for us teachers and the kids to dig deeper into those concepts and have the time to actually explore and understand them.
Mamaroneck District Elementary math coach Mariana Ivanov has been working to spread a revitalized program created specifically for the Common Core by nonprofit teaching resource Engage New York.
The Engage New York modules have been written for the Common Core, and so far this is the only program. It's only mathematics curriculum that was written for the Common Core. There are many commercial programs out there that are claiming that are Common Core aligned. They are aligned to some point, to some degree, but they weren't written for the Common Core. They were just modified.
Part of her job is to teach teachers how to use the new programs and tools to help their students.
We have been working with the teachers in finding ways, whether it's through manipulatives, through something like the strings that I use today, to help the kids discover concepts. It's very different than telling them how to do something or what to do versus them discovering it. Once they discover it, they remember it for life.
Ms. Ivanov is also a math lover herself and has been since childhood.
Since I was in school, I always loved it because I love logical things and I always learn it through understanding it. I never memorized rules or procedures, and it really made sense for me.
For The Local Live, this is Alina Suriel signing off. The Middle East, Iraq in particular, is a regular topic in the media, classrooms, and casual conversation. 12 years ago, the country was invaded, its infrastructure destroyed, and the people confronted by armed conflict. Ever since the U.S. withdrawal of armed forces in 2011, the new government has faced instability. The current insurgency of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, the ISIS, has prompted calls for the U.S. to redeploy troops, or to stay out and let the Iraqi people deal with their own problems. Or something else in between. Local Live reporter Kyle Byrne talked with several Larchmonters and asked what advice they'd give our president.
The president announced that he'd be sending 300 military advisors in Iraq, but pledged to not send any troops. Is that the right decision? He's getting advice from both the left and the right, but I wanted to find out what advice you would give the president if you had the chance.
I think the best way to approach it is with a high degree of restraint. And at the very least, if we do need to go in and be a presence there, it needs to be a coalition of other countries, not just us. We should never be the world's policeman.
I think that we need to actually remove ourselves from the Middle East. I think that we need to take all of the funds, the trillions of dollars, and all of the Americans' lives lost already, and focus on the United States and our issues. But I think that it's time to end the illegal occupation. Well, that's what I call it, because all it's doing is inciting more hatred toward the U.S.
So I think sending military advisors is a good first step. And I don't want to be involved in another war. So I think it's a happy medium and appeasing, the two different interests going on right now.
Out of all the people I talked to, it seems as though the consensus is that the president made the right decision and that the Iraqis should solve the conflict on their own. In Larchmont, for the Local Live, I'm Kyle Byrne.
Jessie and Stella are two adorable sister pups looking for a home. They are a Jack Russell mix and are about 1.5 years old. They are spayed and fully up to date on shots. To adopt these precious sisters, please contact Special Needs Animal Rescue and Rehabilitation on the web at snarrnortheast.org or call Courtney Ballou at 9149-46456. You can email her about Jessie and Stella at Courtney at snarrnortheast.org.
Hi, I'm State Senator George Latimer, and I encourage you to watch every week The Local Live. I was going to say something like, I live in Rye, but if I lived in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, I would watch The Local Live every week. I just remind. Thank you.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of The Local Live. I'm Melina Suriel.
And I'm Anthony Carlo. We'll see you here next time at The Local Live.
Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is The Local Live.